She didn't knock. She screamed. "He's trespassing! Arrest him now!" Her finger was shaking as she pointed at me, like she was already sure I was finished. Two police cars slid to a stop at the edge of the vineyard, lights flashing red across the vines. I didn't move. I was standing between the rows, mud on my boots, pruning shears still in my hand. Karen waved a stack of papers in the air and yelled, "This land belongs to the HOA. He's stealing crops." One officer looked at me and asked, "Sir, is this your property?" I opened my mouth, but Karen cut me off fast. "He's lying." I've warned him before. "He thinks he owns the valley." Her voice had that smile in it, the one people use when they think power is already on their side. I slowly pulled my phone out, not to show anything yet, just to unlock it. The wind moved through the vines, quiet but heavy. I looked at the officer and said calmly, "Before you arrest anyone, you might want to check who called this land protected." Karen laughed loud and sharp. "Protected? By who?" One of the officers paused, hand hovering over his radio. That's when her smile started to slip. The officer finally spoke into his radio, low and careful. Karen stepped closer to me and whispered, "You're done. I already filed the report." I could smell her perfume, strong and rushed. One cop walked a few steps away, scanning the valley like something felt off. Karen turned back to them and said, "He threatened HOA members. My kids are scared to walk here." That one hit hard. A lie, clean and cruel. The officer nearest to me asked me to put the shears down. I did, slow, calm. Then I said, "You should also know, my son is at home right now, and this land isn't open to public claims." Karen snapped. "He's making stories again." That's when the radio crackled back. Not loud, just enough. The officer's face changed. He asked Karen, "Ma'am, did you say the HOA owns the entire valley?" She nodded fast. "Yes, all of it." He looked at the other cop. Then at me, then back at the vines. "Dispatch says this land is under a federal agricultural trust." Karen laughed again, but this time it sounded thin. "That's impossible. I signed the notices myself." I finally looked at her and said quietly, "That's the problem." Karen's smile froze. She waved her hand like she could erase what was said. "Trust or not, HOA rules apply," she snapped. One officer asked her for the HOA papers. She pulled out a folder, thick, messy, pages sticking out like she grabbed whatever she could find. He flipped through it slowly, too slowly. Then he paused. "Ma'am, these stamps are fake." Karen raised her voice. "Are you accusing me?" She stepped back and pointed at me. "He forged things first. He lies. He hides things." I stayed quiet. I bent down and picked a grape that had fallen, crushed it between my fingers. Purple juice ran down my hand. I wiped it on my jeans and said, "You should check the gate camera by the south road." The second officer looked at me sharp. "What camera?" I nodded toward the hill. "The one installed after the wildfire." Karen's head turned fast. She didn't know about that. The radio crackled again, this time louder. The voice said a name. "My last name." Both officers looked at me at the same time. One asked, slow and careful, "Sir, are you related to the owner listed here?" I took a breath and said, "He was my father." Karen whispered, "That's not possible." But no one was listening to her anymore. The air shifted. Karen laughed, but it came out thin. "That doesn't mean anything," she said fast. "The HOA controls this valley now." One officer stepped away and made a call. He walked toward the patrol car, eyes on the ground. Like he already knew where this was going. Karen moved closer to me and lowered her voice. "Listen, we can fix this. You just need to sign a compliance form, easy." I looked at her hand. It was shaking. Behind us, a tow truck rolled in, slow and loud, chains clinking. My truck. The driver jumped out and said, "HOA called. Says this vehicle is illegally parked." My kid's backpack was still in the back seat. I felt my jaw lock, but I didn't raise my voice. I said, "Don't touch it." Karen smiled again. Too late. The hook slid under the tires. Then the officer near the car shouted, "Stop!" He held his phone up. "Dispatch just confirmed something." He looked at Karen. "This land was never part of your HOA. Not 1 inch." Karen stepped back. "That's wrong." I filed. The officer cut her off. Ma'am, the person who filed those changes used your email. The tow truck driver slowly lowered the chains. No one told him to, but he understood. Karen's face went pale as the radio crackled again. And this time, it wasn't good news for her. Karen started talking fast, words crashing into each other. That email was hacked. Everyone knows hackers do that. She pointed at me. He planned this. He's been lying since day one. The officer didn't react. He just asked her to turn around. She didn't. She tried to walk past him. Toward her SUV. That's when another cruiser pulled in. Lights off, engine quiet. A man stepped out, older, calm, jacket open. The first officer straightened up without thinking. Sir, Karen froze. Who is that? She whispered, like she already felt it. The man looked at me, then at the vineyard behind my house. I didn't expect to see chains on a truck today, he said. I answered, neither did I. He nodded once. Then he turned to Karen. Ma'am, did you file a report saying this man threatened you with a firearm? Karen lifted her chin. Yes, for my safety. The man exhaled slowly. Because that report triggered an alert. He looked back at me. You still carry? I lifted my jacket just enough to show the permit, legal, clean. Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The man continued, you filed a false report on land owned by a federally protected agricultural trust. He paused. And you did it to a veteran. That word hit the ground hard. Phones came out from nearby houses. Karen's voice broke. I didn't know. The man shook his head. You didn't ask. He turned to the officers. Secure her phone. As they stepped closer, Karen screamed, This isn't over! I looked at the vines moving in the wind and said quietly, For you, it already is. Karen kept shouting while they took her phone. Like volume could change facts. This HOA runs this valley, she yelled. He forged papers. Check his house. Check his bank. One officer walked toward my truck, still chained. He touched the metal, then looked at the ground markers half buried in dirt. Old ones, not HOA plastic. Real survey pins. He radioed in a code and waited. Karen laughed, nervous now. See? They'll find it. The older man didn't move. He asked me, when did you buy the South Ridge? I said, I didn't, my grandfather did. Before there was a road. Karen snapped her head toward me. That's not true. The officer came back, slower this time. Sir, county records just came in. He looked at Karen. The HOA boundary ends 2 miles. East. Silence hit hard. One neighbor whispered, 2 miles. Another phone went live. Karen stepped back. No, no. The Vineyard agreement? The older man cut her off. You mean the one you edited last month? He held up a printed page. Red marks everywhere. You changed dates. You changed names. Karen's hands shook. I was protecting property values. The officer said, You trespassed. You ordered a tow without authority. You filed a false police report. He paused. And you threatened a man's family. Karen screamed my daughter's name. That did it. Cuffs clicked. One neighbor said out loud, She said his kid. The crowd shifted. I didn't smile. I just looked at the vines again and said, This land survived fires, floods, and wars. I turned to Karen as they walked her away. It wasn't scared of you. The crowd didn't leave. They leaned in. The older officer asked one last thing, calm but sharp. Sir, why is this land marked federal green? Karen froze mid-step. I took a breath. Because it's protected, I said. Not by the HOA, by the country. Phones rose higher. The officer nodded. Conservation easement. Signed 20 years ago. Karen started crying, loud and messy. He tricked us! I shook my head. You tried to sell? Tasting rights on land you never owned. The officer turned her around. And you tried to push a veteran off it. That word hit the crowd. A man whispered, Veteran? I didn't explain. I didn't have to. The officer continued. This valley supplies the base hospital. Emergency stock. You blocked access. Karen's face went white. A second cruiser arrived. Then a third. Someone from the county stepped out, suit and boots. He looked at me and smiled small. Sorry it took 12 minutes. Karen yelled, This isn't over. The county man replied, It is. He faced the cameras. Effective today, The HOA charter is suspended pending fraud. Charges, gasps, rolled like wind through vines. I walked to the gate and cut the chain myself. Metal fell. Quiet. I turned to the crowd and said, the line people kept sharing that night. You don't own land by shouting. You keep it by honoring it. My daughter ran up and hugged my leg. The sun hit the valley just right. And for the first time all day, the vines were still.